emotional intelligence will determine your success. That's just in life. Even more so in sales, because we sell emotion. We transfer emotion and exchange it for currency or commitment. You guys get that? So, for example, we don't sell 3.5. We don't sell the fees. We're actually selling the solution. We're selling the destination. We're not selling the vehicle. I want to share with you guys a concept, and the reason why I was chosen to do this training was it's really just acting off the sense of urgency. And I think that we act off the sense of urgency on particular things. We don't treat certain things with as much urgency as we would other things. And in the last meeting, I actually brought up the analogy or the example of Breakfast of Champions. Breakfast of Champions has been a voluntary meeting. It's kind of like a session that happens every Friday morning. And yesterday or last week, to announce it to the floor, I was like, hey, breakfast in the conference room. And we had people rush to the door. And unfortunately, they were just there for the breakfast. They weren't there for the training. And you have to realize that, and sometimes it may happen to us. Like we may get an email and say, hey, lunch in the break room. This happens typically on the weekends. You'll notice how much of a rush because we understand the upside. We understand that there is a solution to something that we feel right then and there. Sometimes it's hunger. Sometimes it's a motive to grab your food before it's gone. There's something that's pushing you, right? And this can happen in other different areas in our life of what we act urgently on. So for example, towards the end of the month, we'll act urgently to hit the month's goal. And I think that there are certain tweaks or adjustments that you can do to alter that effect, but that's a different conversation. What I want to do is share with you guys a certain way to influence urgency to those we engage with, because that's the ultimate solution I think we can all benefit from here. Whatever experience you have or seasoning you have or however many loans you've closed or didn't close, I think that the information I'm going to share with you here is different than the norm of what's taught because it has to do with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming it's basically the idea of how decisions are made, what influences others to do things. And within the lessons of NLP, they refer to these to a term called triggers. And triggers are certain words that you could say to manipulate the emotion behind it. Meaning that, for example, for those of you who have not checked out the sales script that I have shared, a lot of that is actually based on that ideology. And the reason for that is because I believe the sense of urgency doesn't just happen at the end, where typically right now, the sense of urgency is only offered at the end. But if we want this specific result, we have to actually reverse engineer it. And the end result that we're trying to learn here today is how do I get this person to act urgently, to do what I need them to do in order for me to make sense of this sale, right? And that whatever they need to do, whether it's gather their documents or get an appraisal paid for, we need to have them do it quick so we can hand the baton off and go hunt some more. And so we see the upside to creating a sense of urgency. And I think that if you do see the upside of that, then you're really going to hone in and take away a lot of the lessons that I share with you in this meeting. But when we really break it down and analyze, again, reverse engineer and say, hey, I need this person to act fast. I need them to ignore every distraction around them. I need them to tell themselves when they say, I'll just get to it tomorrow, I need them to not procrastinate. Right? This is what we're thinking. And so we try to set that at the end of the close. And typically, and I'm not saying that you guys are doing anything wrong, maybe that's your style and that's the way it worked. What I want to do is introduce you to a new way, a different way to do the same thing. And the scripting of the script, or the words of the script, for example, right away, like let's say David was the prospect and Quinn, or Q, right? Let's say he's the one who transferred the lead. Let's say, hey, David, thanks for holding. of course I thank Q. They say, hey, the reason why Q is transferring you over to me is because I'm authorized to provide you with the information you need. But before I begin, let me just make sure you're in the right place. I'm going to ask a few basic questions to make sure that I can help you first. If I can, I'm going to show you exactly what I can do. If I can't, I'm going to help you save a bunch of time. Just those few sentences is so important because it enables you to control the conversation, control the engagement, and trigger a response. Such as, oh, this is going to be quick. I'm going to save some time. This is the right person to talk to. He's going to send it to me if he can help me. I've already answered most of the objections that initially we run into, right? And when we understand that, we actually we manifest that objection by asking them, how can I help you? What's your goal? But we don't know it. Sometimes we just simply, because again, it's out of our comfort zone to say anything different. And because we hear it being practiced by everyone else, hey, it must work for them, right? Well, I might as well do it. And so that's influence at work. You are influenced by your peers. You're influenced by your surroundings to do certain things. And what I found was, by using that script, it allowed me to take control of the conversation and hone in on the thing. Again, I reverse engineered, right? I was always thinking, well, how can I make this person want what I have so bad that he's going to act right now and do it right now? And so in reverse engineering, I found out that I need to connect with them in a different way. And usually how I used to connect with them when the market was good or before I really start getting good at this, was that I would connect with them based on rate and fees, right? I would, in other words, I would have the entire conversation formatted in a way where it was all based off, yeah, I got the lowest rate. Oh yeah, I'm going to show no fees. Oh yeah, lowest cost. Oh yeah, I'm going to get you the lowest rate. And so naturally, the engagement was all based off of rate and fees. Make sense? When I did a simple adjustment and I stopped asking, what's your goal? Because I already knew what the goal was. More importantly, I needed to position myself in a way that at the very end, they would act with urgency. So I knew that they wouldn't act with urgency if I was a salesman. I knew they wouldn't act with urgency if I was a marketer, because I'm empathetic. I understand what these prospects go through every day. They have become desensitized to the word act now, right? Get it now. Everything says that. So they become desensitized to it, much like we're desensitized to the email notifications from BV. It's just there. Get out of the way. Think about it, right? This is how our thought process works. And so then I realized that, well, if I can't get their attention and make them respond as a salesman, well, what would make them respond with urgency? And what I found was authoritative figures make you respond with urgency, such as law enforcement. If you're driving on the road, right, and you see law enforcement in your rear view, what do? Just kind of sit up straight, make sure you're, right? You're influenced. Again, that's influence. If you are speaking with a doctor, right, and the doctor tells you certain things, you just cooperate. He's not asking you, hey, may I take your heart pressure, right? May I take a blood sample? They're not asking you, they're saying, hey, this is what you need to do. There's just a different tonality. Same thing with an attorney. Same thing with a contractor or a person doing a bid for your house, right? There's just a specific tone. And so I've realized that because of that influence, then I needed to switch up my demeanor. And so instead of asking, hey, what's your goal? I played off to their emotion of just wanting to save time and wanting to save the most money. I already knew what it was about. Make sense? I wasn't acting new. I wasn't like, hey, what's your goal? I already knew. So if I asked that question, I would be positioned more as a salesman. Instinctively, after I asked that question, if they said a rate that I personally didn't agree with, I justified the reason or the amount of hustle I'm going to put behind it. Meaning, oh, that's a lower rate. He's probably not going to buy it. So now my hustle meter just went way down. My enthusiasm dropped. I almost was checking my watch and be like, oh, I got another call. Right now I'm trying to rush off the phone. I'm actually trying to find reasons as why the loan won't work. Because I've made the decision as to what he's going to buy, what they perceive as value. And what I did was I stopped that mentality because I understood that mentality just backs up a salesman, right? A consultant or someone who's planning for a marathon, for example, is going to be one that actually makes the most of that engagement and will properly farm the data, mine the data, so that if in the event I can't help them now, I understand that in 6 or 12 months I possibly can. So it's never a lose to me, but that's just the way I look at it. Simple adjustments, simple tweaks like that will change your demeanor. It will change the way you convey a message. It would actually change the way you influence people to do certain things. But besides the NLP thesis of triggers, there are certain emotions that ultimately drive urgency. Make sense? Meaning that there is something behind it that drives urgency. Similar to the reason why prospects ask for the lowest rate is because that is the only way that they understand to lower their payment. They just don't know how to say it any other way, right? So they believe that if they have 3.5 on their mortgage now, and that brings a payment of $3,000, the only way that they're going to save $500 is if they lower the 3.625. Get it? Because they don't understand it like we do. So naturally, that consumer is going to call and say, hey, I need a lower rate than 3.625. But we digest the information in a way where, depending on who's digesting the information, is going to be combative. They're going to get frustrated. Oh, we got another rate shopper. Sound familiar? Right? And then our demeanor changes because we are influenced from the memories we have in referencing what we just went through. Whether it was a bad call with a specific borrower or a bad experience with a loan processor, we're actually bringing that in with us. And now it's no more about the prospect. This is why they don't follow you. But when you connect with them at an emotional level and you become the expert, you become the consultant, guess what you now can do? You can make them do certain things. But it takes a lot. It's a different mindset to feel that you have the authority to do something like that. And so I understand that not everybody can deliver in this way, but if you want that specific result, you need to operate and do something that's different from what you're doing right now. So some of you may not even need help with this. And I appreciate still you guys attending, and I think that there are some nuggets that you're going to pick up just from being in this meeting. But when we understand what actually pulls someone's attention is actually rooted and motivated by three main things. Those three main things is fear, love, and status. This is what neuro-linguistic programming taught me. Some real deep stuff. So it's pretty interesting if it's really deep. So, if you try to go Google NLP, you're just going to get lost in a labyrinth of information. So over the years, I've just picked out the tidbits. And one of the things that I've understand is emotional intelligence will determine your success. That's just in life. Even more so in sales, because we sell emotion. We transfer emotion and exchange it for currency or commitment. You guys get that? So, for example, we don't sell 3.5. We don't sell the fees. We're actually selling the solution. We're selling the destination. We're not selling the vehicle. Make sense? This is why you can create, or this is how you can create a specific reaction, is because you understand and picked apart your engagement to find out why they need the result. And when you create a message in a way that speaks directly to them, they have now connected with you. That is rapport. It's not, rapport isn't, oh, hey, I got 3 kids myself. Yeah, absolutely, 16, 10, and 3. Hey, do your kids do soccer? Me too. That's not rapport. If anything, that's a red flag that you're trying to sell them, right? So we have to understand this, because if we don't adapt with the times, much like we need to adapt with the market, we're going to get left behind and then be confused as to why we're being left behind. So if we're, for example, in this market is not, of course, it's not a rate and term market, right? So if it's not a rate and term market, why would we ask what they're doing? What's your goal? You're going to open up the conversation for that one person who only understands that if you drop the rate is how you lower the payment. You're going to open up that objection, which then diverts your course, your path, your momentum, right? Because you've then now given them control of the conversation. And so even if you're strong, you've still triggered a specific gauge of that conversation. In other words, if they said, well, I need something lower than 3.625, the trigger has happened to the salesman because they know that it's not available. Make sense? When you don't have confidence in the message you're delivering, your tonality changes. Make sense? It's real deep, right? But this is how you trigger certain things and you create emotion. And so if I was empathetic enough to understand that what he means is that he needs a lower payment, then I can react differently. I can help him find what the lower payment is for. And so the reason why that scripting works is because it allows me to hone in directly into what results they need. And so then I've created what was called funnel questions. Or I didn't create it. What I'm saying is that I just termed it or coined it funnel questions. And ultimately what a funnel question is it's going to help you extract the absolute most important information from that conversation in an order. So for example, if I knew that this person needed to save money and I knew that that rate's not available, I'm going to get creative and think, okay, well, how else can I help this person save money? Because I don't know how he values $20 versus someone else who values that $20, right? And so I understand that I can't put my emotion or I can't invest, and I cannot, me personally, I cannot justify what they perceive as value. So that's probably one of the hardest things, because there are going to be times where you're only able to save them $25. And if you go into it just believing like, man, that's so small, it's not going to come out properly. Unless you get creative and you figure out certain things like the reason why he needs a lower payment is because he's at a deficit per month. The reason why he's at a deficit per month is because the wife lost overtime, or because the kids are now in daycare or private school or college or now driving, right? We fail to pay attention to that because our motive is to sell a rate and payment. We're coming at it with a kind of a biased motive. So our energy is just one specific path. Whereas if you honed in on the reason why they need the result, then you have a little bit more control of the conversation, right? And so this becomes a challenge, because if we allowed them to get that objection up front, and I say we allowed them because we did. We asked them, what's your goal? What are you looking to do? We allowed them to do that. So if you didn't ask that question and you drove directly towards a leverage, even if they brought up an objection, you now have a toolkit, for example, to keep them engaged. So if they say, oh, Daniel, you know what, can you beat this or not? Hey, you know what, I completely get it. I know you're in a rush. As a matter of fact, you shared with me that you're at a monthly deficit. And if your goal is to really get out of this deficit, get more control of your budget, offset the loss in income from your wife's lost overtime, or help afford your kids' tuition, I can show you how. I'm just making sure that I can even move further with the conversation. You see, I could send you generic information, but you can get that on the radio. If you want information worth your time, which it sounds like you do because you're in a rush, that's what I'm doing. You're approaching an emotion that's different versus what your competitors do, right? Competitors, well, I could get you a 3.5 and he has 3.625. Let them do that, because that makes them look bad. But if I understood that that was the reason why they need the lower rate, then I'm going to hone in on that specific reason. Now I have enough leverage for them to follow me. And you want them to follow you because that is what positions you as authority. And the only way you're going to gain trust to have someone react is if you are in a position of authority. And what's funny is authority doesn't necessarily mean you have a badge or a title. Authority means that is that you are in control. That's the authority, is what I'm talking about. So when you are in control in a way where your pitches has them anticipating, like, yes, how do I do that? I want that. What do I need to do that, Daniel? You want them to react that way? Then there's a completely different setup than the norm, the traditional way. Let me remind you guys usually what the traditional way is. Hey, Monique, this is Daniel with New American Funding. I got those options for you. If you can grab a pen and paper, let me go over that with you. I got option 1, 4.99, but is lender credit, pays for the entire loan. And then we have option number 2, 5.25, right? The problem with that is that you are actually putting them in a defensive state. By delivering the information this way, you're actually pushing them away. Because if they didn't agree with the rate, then they don't agree with any information that follows it. I use the analogy of if you guys ever read a book and you're going through, right, and something catches your eye or puts you in a deep thought, but your momentum still goes and you keep reading, but you didn't even absorb the information for the last 3 or 4 pages. If that's happened to you, it's because something's diverted your attention. And it happens similar to interest rate. Like you ever heard the term, like, you lost me at hello, right? You lost me at 4.875. And that literally does happen, where they now discredit all of the benefit you give to them, and we could really be changing their life. This is something that we believe that they should act urgently for. But it's just a matter of switching the delivery. So the general concept right now, how a sales pitch is done, is it's broken down in, let's say, 3 components. The first component that's covered is rate and fees. Second component is benefits. And then the final is the logistics. This is what I need. This is how it happens. This is what we do. It's going to be closed, right? This is the ending. And so since it opened up with rate and fees, I noticed that they didn't care about the benefits nor the logistics. So I was losing them here. And I had to climb up such a great big hill just to even go over the benefits and stress the benefits. So if this is happening to you, realize that this is why it's happening. So all I did was, to remaster it, all I did was move the points and fees to the very end. And so now I open up with benefits and results, logistics, and then rate and fees. The reason why that's more effective is because you have controlled their emotion. They want whatever it is you have. If you notice, people will pay a premium for things that are very convenient. If we realize what convenience is triggered by saving time and saving money, right? It's triggered, like, okay, cool, it's more efficient, right? We will justify it however we wish to justify it. But that's ultimately why we will decide to pay a premium, is the convenience and it being easy to do it. And so if I open it up with benefits and results this way, in other words, compare the 2 pitches, okay? Like the one I just did with Monique, option 1, 4.99, option 2, right? Compare it to this way. Mind you, at the end of the conversation, the very first conversation, how you transition to the second call matters. Because if they are under the impression that that next engagement is a pitch, you've already set yourself up for resistance. Because they are going to be on guard, they're going to discredit whatever you have to say just by a little bit, and they're not really going to trust it. This is how they are influenced, right? And instead of opening up like, hey, there are options, by transitioning the second engagement as, you know what, Monique, based on this conversation, it sounds like, because there's a monthly deficit of this much, because income has dropped, and because there's less than 6 months of living expenses, I am certain that the credit score has been damaged, and I want to protect you by protecting your equity, by protecting your cash flow, and protecting your FICO score. So I got a few ideas. Let me run it by my manager real quick. Let me get his blessing. If I can disclose it, I'll release it back to you. Okay? I'll probably have his answer by about 6:30. I'll need your consent before I could release it. Are you and your wife going to be there? That's how I transition to the pitch call. And there are reasons why I word it that way, is because I want to immediately dissolve the objection of, let me talk to my spouse about it. Because I know Jim cannot sell as good as I can. Or let me talk to my husband about it. Let me run some numbers by him. Or let us talk about it. These are objections that we know we're going to face, right? And by setting it at 6 o'clock, I make it easy for them both to be available. Mind you, I'm not coming from a biased mindset, meaning that I'm just worried about myself. So, oh man, I got to leave at 5 o'clock in order to get to an hour of traffic. I can't make this call at 6 o'clock, right? I'm positioning myself because I only got one goal for being here, and that's to give as much value as I can, right? And because I understand the upside, so that influences me. Anyway, when you set up the call for the second meeting to be kind of, that's the suspense, that's the movie trailer, right? Like I brought up their emotion. I nailed them, every single thing that they forgot they even told me. Oh man, how did he know I had a deficit? Oh man, how did he know I had less than 6 months of living? Oh man, how did he know my FICO score is being, right? And I'm hitting them. That's giving me trust. Okay, this guy knows me. That's influencing me to believe that person, right? And so when then I build the suspense, you know what? I got a couple ideas. Let me get the blessing first before I release it to you. I'll probably have an answer back by about 6 o'clock. Now I've transferred the focus of, oh, what's he gonna say, right? What's his idea? Now I'm anxious to learn more. Different perception on how, hey, I'll have options for you at 6 o'clock. Gonna get pitched by this guy, right? Think about that, and if it makes sense, use it. So when you open up the second conversation, how does that sound? Well, how it sounds is like this, is, hey, Monique, this is Daniel. Hey, you know what? I was just going to go ahead and release the information to you for your review, and I found something. I have an idea, and I want to run it by you. Get your feedback first before I send it out. You know what? I need your wife's consent or your husband's consent before I send it out. Let's go and bring her on. You said she's available. Let me conference call her or put me on speakerphone. And this is where you reframe the mindset. Because the first person was only with you on that first engagement, the only thing that's going to stop the urgency is if the second person, the decision influencer, is going to persuade them. Again, if you reverse engineer and you say, hey, I need this person to act with urgency and not be distracted by external factors like their spouse, right, their mom, their dad, their CPA, whatever excuse that they give to us as to why they're not acting with urgency. And so I'm always a parent and thinking about that. And so I know that I'm going to create roadblocks if I don't incorporate the other decision maker, right? I'm not going to be able to control the engagement. And so since that second person was not with you, you have to reframe their mindset. You have to show them that you listened to the reasons why they needed the results. It's not saying, hey, I think I got a lower payment for you. Go deeper than that, right? That's not framing their mindset. It's just kind of like a news flash. Say, hey, you know what, Monique, hey, Mr. Monique, I had a chance to speak with Monique earlier today, and she shared with me some information. I'm actually going to go ahead and release out the results right now. It's going to go to your Gmail account. But before I do, I had an idea, and I really want to run it by you both, right? I want to get your feedback, and get it as tailored as possible for you. And what Monique shared with me was that as of right now, it is important, as a matter of fact, it's needed that you lower your payment because there's a monthly deficit, and with the loss of your overtime and the lack of assets in the bank, there's actually no plan B. Your FICO score is actually taking the brunt force because you mentioned to me your credit cards are climbing, and as of right now, you're only making the minimum payment versus above and beyond. And I had an idea because I fear that if you continue down this path, it's not going to work out in your favor. So I had an idea. You'd mentioned that was important, and I believe I have a solution that will create X amount of dollars in savings, wipe out X amount of dollars in credit card debt, put back 6 months of living expenses in your bank account, protect your FICO score, protect your home ownership, give you more cash flow and breathing room. Right? Now is the pain, the solution, and now the benefit.